we need to find some support for those people affected by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wada. Now we'll move right on to our public forum, and this is where a member of the public can make a comment or suggestion on or point to for the commission an issue in their community. And I'll just and we have about 15 minutes for this section. Please keep your remark relatively short. We will always follow up if you have an issue you want us to. I'll start with the list on the top of the list. Addie, would you like to make a public comment?
Hello, everybody. Thank you. My name is Addie. I am Chichimeca, Chicano, Two-Spirit, binary, and gay. I've lived on occupied Salish land for about 24 years. The other 6 I spent in occupied Osage and Tonga territory where I was born. So that makes me 28 years old. I'm Indigenous music producer and artist. I'm a former bus driver for Pierce and King County, as well as Sound Transit. I'm working with King County Coalition Against Hate and Bias under the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation. This Thursday at 2:30 p.m., we are hosting an open dialogue with broadcast journalist Enrique Serna about equity and diversity. So please check the flyer we'll be sending for information about how to sign up. $100 stipends will be allotted for youth attendees while the funds last. Now I'd like to talk about some of the concerns I have regarding the communities in which I come from and serve. My concerns come from my work collecting stories by the people who have been marginalized in the King County area, as well as after looking over the 2021-22 budget of the anti-racism, specifically regarding intersections such as LGBTQ, the houseless, disabled, undocumented communities. There's nothing specified for these groups of people who also experience racism as well as other forms of hate and prejudice. As a bus driver for King County surrounding areas, and as a child who used to take these buses growing up with his grandmother, I advocate for reallocating fare enforcement funding towards community bus passes and abolishing the fare completely. Because over 90% of driver assaults happen over fare disputes. Being on both sides of the driver's seat, I have seen and felt how it creates a division between the entity that's supposed to take care of the community and the community itself. So that goes for school enforcement as well, because I grew up in a school that had police officers patrolling the hallways. I think we should allocate money for programs after school to be mandated and not optional, to have leadership people in these hallways that are replacing the police officers. Another point I wanted to make is, how do we prioritize who do we help? Because I noticed that we address that if we only have 1,000 spots for people, and how do we prioritize that? Do we do some kind of affirmative action? Another one I wanted to point out was accountability. How do we implement like a council of community members that will ensure that we enforce these policies, or that the funding is being allocated to the correct communities? I saw that literature, and I know Commissioner Ping mentioned this also, literature being languages that are in the King County area. And I would like to know what languages those are and how many of them are Lushootseed, because we are on occupied Salish land. And I feel like it's important to have that literature be translated in the language, because we have a revival of the language in the area. And that I believe is important. Another thing that Commissioner Ping mentioned that I also wanted to bring up was, how is COVID affecting Asian American and immigrant communities disproportionately? And how is the budget addressing that? So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Addie. Does any of the commissioner have a follow-up to Addie's comment? I'm sorry, for a minute there, you were a little bit choppy, so I did miss some of your statements.
Yeah, I would like to just ask Eddie that did you mention my name? Like when I mentioned something that you kind of feel the same way, because I didn't hear you very clearly, and also you said that you are advocating for
You've got mail.
Passes, right? Okay, thank you.
Addie, this is Director Hasagawa. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, using your voice and sharing your perspective. And if you could, I'm going to ask that you please leave your email address in the chat box, because that will put you on our list to receive a lot of the resources, including translated resources for COVID-19 relief. Specifically, we're not King County specific, as you know, we're statewide, but I did want to share with you information about Washington State's language access plan that I think you might find really interesting as a blueprint. You know, CAPA has advocated that the essential materials and announcements and information relating to COVID-19 has to be able to reach communities because, as you said, it's not getting there fast enough. And it's almost like our communities are an afterthought. And so the governor rolled out the language access plan, which makes sure that all materials are translated in a timely fashion into the most commonly spoken languages in Washington State. And as you know, the bulk of our diversity is located right there in King County. And so it could be a really useful guide, not just for our state partners, but I think folks on the county level as well. And by no means do I think Washington State has it completely figured out. You know, we're still seeing that a huge delay in translating resources and getting meaningful infographics out to community members who benefit from them. But in terms of a resource, it is a start. So Rosa can go ahead and drop a link to that in the chat box. Go ahead and take a look. In terms of fair enforcement, you know, I'd be interested what you think about what good statewide policy could be, and if you know of any legislators that are currently working on that, because definitely, particularly with sound transit and the fair enforcement and law enforcement issues and the lack of police accountability there tied to that at King County, I'm sure that there are issues like that in other parts of the state as well. Anything you could do to point us in the direction of solutions, we're definitely all ears. I don't know of any state policy. However, I will say that I believe that Councilmember Zahilai in King County is looking at some of those. I think he actually campaigned on addressing reducing fair enforcement. So those are just some initial thoughts. You had a lot in there. Thank you again for sharing with us. And my final note is about accountability and like how there's, you know, not 1,000 seats for 1,000 people, right? We have the exact same issue here at CAPA. Asian, Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, Kofa community members, we're so diverse. We couldn't possibly represent everybody, you know, one for one. And so, you know, equity is a huge conversation that I think we need to have an authentic and ongoing relationship with. And to that tune, like, thank you for being here. We really heavily rely on being able to partner with members in the public at large to get our message out, but not just to get our message out, but to receive feedback. So your time this morning is precious. Thank you, Addie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Addie. We have to move on. The next public commenter to sign up is Royala. If I'm pronouncing your name right, please speak.
Yes, you are. Thank you for having me. My name is Rayla Bernard. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am Black and Samoan Indigenous woman.